Everyone's good? I'm behind schedule. I got busy, I'm sorry.
Surf's been too good.
Shh. You don't get this suntan for nothing.
So anyway, I'm Courtney from Old Collective, Scotty, founder of Renet, who on Scotty's leaving in 2017, we're managing, I think, $1.125 trillion worth of real estate. 5,000 real estate agents?
Well, it was actually 6,500 and something, and I got sick of saying the figures, so I just rounded everything.
Near enough.
I rounded everything down because I couldn't remember all the figures.
Supposed to round it up.
I know, but I didn't. I just rounded it down to nice, easy figures.
And our entrepreneur in residence here at the Success Hub. So I've learned a lot from Scotty over the past 4 sessions. Looking forward to hearing a bit more about. So today's about sugar and cream. So I see we've got Luke from Artisti here. Sugar and cream should be relevant for you there, mate.
So I saw the coffee cup on the promo and went, oh, look, coffee. That's for me, this one.
For those who don't know, Luke's our local coffee roaster. So anyway, Scotty, you want to fill us in? Sugar and cream, what's it all about?
Yeah, cool. Sugar and cream. It's one of the... Look, there's only a few things that I came up with terminology post-Renet. And sugar and cream was one of them. The philosophy I always had, I just didn't have a way of describing it until towards the end of 2018 when I was having my coffee and I was all of a sudden got this flash of inspiration. And I did a video at the end of 2018 on leadership and sugar and cream. So sugar and cream leadership. And I went, it just made perfect sense to me. And then I sort of hid it for a while. I didn't tell anyone about sugar and cream, although some people caught onto it from that very first video. But yeah, so it's one of the things, even though the philosophy was there, what I realized was that by talking about sugar and cream, I could talk about how I started the company with the clients I got, how I started the company with the staff I hired, how I grew the company with the products I had through a method called sugar and cream. And, it just became an easy way of saying it. And I guess if I throw back, I sort of myself, when I go through this process, I myself was really one of the sugary kind of people. I was a sugary kind of company. So in the end, I was literally the sugar type of person, not the cream type of person. If I go back to even school, all the sports stars, the cream of the crop, they all get all the attention. And there's plenty of other kids out there that were just as good at the sport, just weren't getting the attention because they didn't score the goal or didn't get that lucky break. But they were just as good. They were the sugary people, not the cream. And I'll give a sporting analogy of that later on as it goes. So yes, sugar and cream as an analogy is one of the few things I came up with as a way of describing it post-Renet.
And so I know we've had discussions around, managing staff and that type of thing. I know at Renet, you guys had a very flexible, I guess for staff, it was quite a flexible environment. They were encouraged to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Are they some of the keys to mixing the sugar up?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a heap of ways of looking at the sugar. So if I go back to the analogy of sugar and cream for leadership, when I was looking at, I'd run an ad in the paper back then and people would apply. In the end, it was online advertising and people would apply. When I was looking at all the resumes, there'd be 10, 20, 50 resumes turn up. So people send all their information. And there'd be some real creamy staff turn up that were really qualified, really knew what they were doing. But I was never looking for the creamy type staff. I was always looking for the sugary type staff, the ones that wanted to go on a journey, the ones that would want me to help them get to the next level and really give me back as much as I gave them and not just come and do good at their job. Does that make sense? So when you talk about flexibility, well, that's a throwback of that opportunity and it started in the hiring process. So if you go back to the rule of 100, the first 100 seconds, the first 100 minutes, the first 100 hours, the first 100 days. So that flexibility that I offered staff was because they were sugary staff. I'd give them some motivation, some direction, some opportunity, just a little bit of stirring and a little bit of motivation, and they'd respond to that. So I didn't need to have strict office hours because they were responding to opportunities instead, because they were the sugary staff. Now, if I had hired the cream staff, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'd never hire one, but I just wouldn't have got that same value back out of people. And that's why I was always looking for the sugary staff, the people that wanted to go on a journey and grow. So if we talk about leadership, can I give an example? So as a website designer, most of the website designers I hired didn't know that much about website designing, but they were really good at graphic art. And they'd actually say that in their job application. Now, I've been a graphic artist and I've been doing all this sort of stuff, but I know a little bit about website design, but I'd like to, pivot my career as a website designer. And I'd go, now that's perfect. Here's someone who wants to learn, grow and develop and go on a journey. And that's why I hired those people over the people that were a really good website designer. Because they already had a skill, graphic design, and now they've got motivation. They're sugary staff. And that is how you retain staff all the way along. Well, that's how I did it anyway. So that's an example there of leadership and sugar and cream. And obviously that journey continues on through the 100 days, the 100 weeks. You keep on doing that journey. So
do you think that, when people employ staff, they look too much at skills, that they don't put as much emphasis on finding people who've got a cultural fit with what you're doing?
I can't qualify for everybody. In fact, Brendan, who's on this call, he's a leadership coach, and he probably could qualify this a bit better than me. And I know Elaine's been doing a bit of it as well. But at the end of the day, my philosophy is that when people ask me, I talk to them about not so much the skill set someone's got, but where do they want to go? That's the most important part of when you're looking at bringing someone into your culture and into your team. I had a culture, look, if I had a culture of cream and I had that culture, well then obviously someone comes in that doesn't know what they're doing or wants to go on a journey may not fit. But I had the culture of sugar. So I had the culture of people coming in, wanting to go on a journey. So that's why when I looked at resumes and looked at what people brought to the business, I wanted to find people with the motivation to go to the next level and join that journey. Because everyone in the business had opportunities. Everyone in the business had bonuses, and that's why. So when you talk about culture, yeah, it was a sugary culture. Bonuses, opportunities, flexibility.
It's interesting. I think the last job advert I wrote, I think I had 4 or 5 selection criteria, and the first one was a good work ethic. The second one was it a good work ethic? Turns up on time, good work ethic. I think I repeated those things about 3 or 4 times. It was quite, but yeah, I think it's important that you get those core cultural values that they fit with the organisation. So can you talk a bit, and talking about culture, not just staff, is it important too that, that clients and people who you collaborate, that they all fit within your business culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I go back to the sugar and cream analogy about how I started the company Renet. So, in the real estate industry, as you probably all are aware, there's people like in franchise, and there's franchise groups. All right, so everyone's seen them. And then there's the independent guys, John Smith Real Estate as opposed to Remax Real Estate. So you've got the independent guys, you've got the franchise guys. And obviously then we've got the major metropolitan area with, massive big real estate agents in these major metropolitan areas. And they're really cream clients, right? They're cream because they're franchise. If you pick up one client, you pick up a lot of business. But they're all the creamy ones. And, if I give the analogy of clients, I never went looking for the creamy clients. I went looking for the sugary clients, to the point of I never went to a franchise group. I had no interest at all in a franchise group, trying to sign up 100 or 300 agents in one go. I never went to the cities. This is when I first started, right? I didn't go to the cities. I went to all the regional areas. I went to all the country areas. Why? Because, well, let me give an example. So if I went to a major regional area like Cairns in North Queensland, and there's probably 40 or 50 real estate offices there in that little area. When I got there, I'd go, well, who are all the sugary clients? Where's John Smith Real Estate? Where's Kerry Jones Real Estate? Where are those people? I'm not interested in, or it could have been the Ray White, by the way, or the Remax. But what I'm saying is, the one that's the biggest in town was not the office I went to go and see. I went to go and see the office that was just a normal regular office with, 3 or 4 or 5 staff that most people neglected. I got paid the same whether I got the biggest office in town or the smallest office in town. They all paid the same fee. But the difference was when I got the office in town, that was the normal guy, I'll call it normal, rather than the creamy client. When I got them, they really appreciated me walking in the door to start with, to even have a conversation with them. So that we talk about opening people's minds in your introduction and your presentation. They really appreciated me walking in the door. And then as a client, they were Sugary clients. They'd tell me what they liked, what they wanted, and they became really involved. And that's how come I got away without having contracts with clients over all those years, because they wanted to stay as part of the journey. They wanted to stay in the company and be part of the company themselves. So I was a Sugary person, and I went looking for those Sugary clients to start the real estate software company up. Rather than go looking for the cream like everyone else was looking at, all these Sugary people hidden at the bottom of the cup that just needed a bit of stirring as clients, that's where I went. And the loyalty and the reward from the Sugary clients was exponentially better than anything else. So, and not only that, if I look at the model of, you can either spread yourself out wide or go really high. So with the franchise group, you're really high. You've got all your risk in one sort of vertical. And if you lose that vertical, you lose a lot of your business. Whereas I went wide. So when I had 200 or 300 or 400 clients, if I lost one because something happened or whatever went wrong, maybe not even my fault, well, I lost one client, not 400 offices in one go. So I saw some of my competitor software providers literally evaporate because they lost a cream client. Now all of a sudden they had no business and they were gone. So my model of spreading it out and doing all the Sugary clients might have been a little bit longer path, but long term it was a way better path looking for those Sugary clients. So I went to the Sugary towns, I went to the Sugary clients, and it worked.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket?
Well, don't get me wrong, in the end I ended up with some really good clients out of that. Like Remax is a classic example. So we got Remax, we got Collier's International. We had all those people come on as clients. I took one office when they started in 2003. They went from 3 offices to 26 offices over a 12-year journey. So I was with them all the way. So if you talk about a Sugary client, here's someone who's a go-getter client. Constantly comes to me and says, hey, Scotty, you know what we'd like out of the software now? Because this is going to help us grow our business, is this, this, and this. So I was getting feedback from these Sugary clients about what would make the product better so they could grow their business. Now that is a true win-win. Business judo at its best, really. But that is a true win-win. Now, if I had ever looked at them when they first started and thought, oh, no, they're not a major client or they're not going to go anywhere, they're not that important, I actually helped them on their journey at the end of the day. So, but I got a lot out of it too. And that's because of the Sugary clients and the Sugary philosophy behind that. I helped them stir themselves up. I helped them be sugar with all these ideas. Let's stir the pot. Let's get things going. What else can we do? And that was a bit of a secret formula, to tell you the truth. Bit of a secret formula.
How important is it that you take your clients on the journey with you? And how do you go about it, engaging them, taking them on the journey with your business?
Well, it was a lot easier when it was just Scotty or a small team. The bigger the team got, the harder it was for that to happen. And the more I tried to make sure that the Sugary staff I hired gave a Sugary journey to everyone else. That engagement, that involvement. It gets harder as you try to duplicate yourself. There's no doubt about it. But it's important to do it because, like I said, that's how they feel. Clients feel appreciated. They feel respected. They feel part of a team. And they're Sugary people themselves. That's actually what they're looking for. Like, if everyone's heard of the term the magnetic effect, that's part of that magnetic effect, is creating that environment where they want to be a part of that because they're Sugary people in a Sugary environment, and that's part of that magnetic effect. So it is important, if you ask me.
Yeah. And reciprocal, like you spoke about the guys who went from 3 to 23 26. Or 26, Like important that you join in their journey too?
100%. Yep. I was always part of the journey. I mean, often, at first it was, say, Craig ringing me up, asking me, is this possible? In the end, because we were bigger, he'd ring me up and say, well, Scotty, I want this feature. And I'd go, hey, that's awesome. Or I'd brainstorm it with him. And then his next question would be, well, how much and how long? Because I want it. And off we'd go and we'd develop that for him. So the know, like, and trust on all the layers was there. And in the end, he was a cream client. Everyone came along and tried to take the business off us. Everyone came along. Every single CRM came along and said, hey, we want that guy's business. And he never left. After all these years, I believe he's still there. I'm not 100% sure, but he never left the whole time I was there, because of the journey. So if you ask me the importance of it, I'm going to tell you it's really important. And it's a simple philosophy too. And the other thing is too, some people get disappointed if they're not getting the creamy clients. There's lots of sugary clients out there that are going to be just as good for your business. Just because someone else looks more popular or more famous or more influential, there's lots of sugary clients out there that are going to become those people over the next few years. And you can go on a journey with those people.
You just mentioned trust. I know, you talk about building Renet with no contracts at all with clients, and it was a trust basis, and obviously with staff, working different hours and their own hours, there was a lot of trust in that as well. How important is it in developing strong relationships to have a big element of trust in it?
Well, yeah, and it's a two-way street. And did it work all the time? Well, of course not. But did it work most of the time? Yeah, it did. So the trust thing is... And once again, that comes down to that culture you were talking about and the like-minded people thinking about like-minded things. So, once again, that magnetic effect or the mirroring effect, what I put out came back like a mirror. When I put out sugary type content and the sugary type clients came back with it, well, they knew what they were getting. They knew who they were. We knew who each other was. And the relationship over time was pretty good. But, we lost clients in Renet for the same reasons that we got clients. They got into business, they got out of business. They got into a franchise group, they got out of a franchise group. They grew or they shrunk, whatever it was. And we lost them for the same reason that we got them. So we talk about no contracts. But 14% of our sales, give or take every year, was always a comeback client. Someone that went to a conference somewhere, saw something shiny, thought it was going to be better than Renet. They were part of our low-hanging fruit that weren't that loyal. And then they'd come back. They'd go off to somewhere else for a year or two, then come back. Because what they did was they'd thrown out some of the product and some of that relationship. Even just our support desk. I made sure I paid people to take phone calls. We didn't have a ticket support system. I had people physically answer phones every time someone wanted support and training. Because that's the business we were. We were there to nurture people and give support. And that's that loyalty and everything else that goes with it. So that's because they were sugary clients. They were people who wanted to be on that journey. And if I didn't deliver that, for one, it wasn't who I was. But secondly, it wasn't what they came to join. So I made sure I delivered that all the way through.
Yeah. Brendan just had a question there about what behaviours make up like a sugary client or a sugary staff member. What do you look for in the sugar?
Yeah, all right. So with sugary staff, just to repeat that, it's like... I always look for the people that wanted an opportunity, wanted to grow and prosper. Pretty simple formula. So not so much where they were, but where did they want to be in 3 or 5 years' time? Were they talking about it when they came and looked for work? Were they talking about their career opportunities? And were they talking about their growth in the next few years, where they wanted to go? And that meant I had a sugary person. When someone came along and told me about how good they were and all the good things they've done, rather than all the good things they want to do, well then I wasn't sure I had a lot of value to offer them as staff. And as far as sugary clients go, look, that analogy when I was out going business to business, knocking on real estate agents' door, well, that analogy is I didn't know that they were sugary clients. I just assumed it. I had to just assume that effect, Brendan, because the creamy clients, the ones that are all up in lights and they were busy and they looked like the be-all, end-all, I just knew they weren't my target market. So I select, if I'm going to go through, I'll go back to Cairns. If I'm going to go into Cairns and I'm going to be there for a week, and I can do one presentation in the morning and one presentation in the afternoon, so I can see 10 people while I'm there, well, I'm going to make sure it's the 10 target market. And if I'm going to spend 2 days just trying to talk some creamy client into listening to me, I've wasted opportunities. So I would then go look for what I thought was the sugary type clients, the ones that would appreciate me walking in the door instead of the creamy looking clients. Now, maybe I lost some sales, maybe there were some opportunities I missed, but at the end of the day, it worked for me. So I just kept on working that system. Every time I went to a new town, that's the same system I'd do. And I never went to the cities. Until this day, I've never done a business-to-business call on anyone in a city. The city market wasn't for me. I'm a country person. The magnetic effect, the pull effect, we relate to each other. So where would I go? I'll let the city people look after the city people, and there's thousands of them in the country who really appreciate me being there. and they're the sugar people. They're the sugar clients.
We talk about people, finding out who's their ideal client. Going back to your time at Renet, you don't have to mention names, but have a think. Your ideal client. What was it about them? What was the relationship like?
Oh, look, you knew pretty well fast when you walked in the door. So you'd start having a conversation with people, and they'd start to either respond straight away or they didn't. The whole know, like, and trust. Now, some of that might have been my ability to be able to walk in the door and have a conversation. But straight away, when you walk in the door, if someone's going to be a Sugary client, if they're opening up. And sometimes it wasn't even the boss. Sometimes the boss was a really good salesperson, but he employed an office manager, someone who was the person that did a lot of the hard work. He was busy being a salesperson, owning the business, and he had someone else in the business running all that day-to-day stuff. So sometimes it was the Sugary staff, and they'd go back to the boss and go, hey, boss, Renet's really good, we need to buy this. So sometimes it was the Sugary staff, but what I'm talking about though was it was a Sugary office that I went looking for. It was someone I saw that would appreciate me walking in the door, and sometimes I'd pick those out, by the way, by doing research. So if I go back to the early days of the internet, I'd go online, all right, so here's Courtney Tune Real Estate. I'd go look at your website, I'd go look at your staff, I'd go look at your listings you had, I'd do a drive-by, have a look at your office, and I'd then go, I think Courtney's one of my target market. I would then prepare a presentation for Courtney, because I don't want to waste my time. I'd much rather spend an hour getting ready and walk out the door with a sale than just walk in cold. So I'd try and make my presentation warm, because the more I could turn that Sugary client into a Sugary client, someone who opened up with a little bit of ownership or possession on this software, the better the results. But I didn't know till I walked in the door. It's not like I had a 100% strike rate. I had far from 100% strike rate, far from it. But I still have a good strike rate because of my years of experience of being able to walk in business to business. But I didn't know if Courtney I'd walk in the door and Courtney would be someone completely different to what I saw. He could have been not a nice guy, or he might have been a nice guy. He might have not liked me, or he might have liked me. I don't know till I walk in the door. But I do know I want to improve my strike rate. So I pick Courtney Tune Real Estate out of the market. I prepare for it, and I try and then look at what would motivate him based on what I saw. What were some of the things that he'd want to do based on what I've already seen, some of the evidence. And I knew the market. I knew the real estate market by then. I'd been in the business for several years selling solutions, so I knew the sort of things they wanted or what they may want. And then I'd start that conversation up. But I still didn't know till I walked in the door. It was totally cold. So what do I look for is probably the original question. I just had to guess, educated guesses, and then deal with it when I walked in the door.
I think good business is about exceeding expectations, going that extra mile.
Yep.
Do you agree? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, extra mile is one of my favourite topics because, in fact, I think we spoke about this last week, didn't we, Elaine? Or the week before, plus 1% or plus 10%. It's actually not that hard to stand out above the competition by just doing that little bit extra. So when we talk about the sugar and cream, the Sugary people are the ones, whether they're staff or whether they're clients or your product and things like that. It's not hard to have things look 1% better because the people are looking for it. They're Sugary people. So the Sugary clients are looking for that stuff and they're willing to do the extra mile. And as a company, the staff I employed are willing to do the extra mile because remember, it's not just a job for them, it's an opportunity. So if something needed to get done or they were learning something themselves, they were willing to go the extra mile to get things done because they were improving their skill set and their knowledge. Does that make sense? So you talk about the extra mile. If you want staff to come to work and not be on a roster like 9 to 5, and you want them to go the extra mile, well, you create opportunities. But if you hire a creamy staff member who doesn't really want to drive anywhere or go anywhere, will only do it if he's told to do it because it's part of their job description, well, then you're going to run into that problem, right? But if you get a Sugary person who says, no, and even at night time, I'd see the tickets come in because we had an internal ticketing system or jobs get done or emails fire backwards and forwards because they were at night time improving their skills. They were learning to do better and better all the time without any sort of, what do you want to call it, requirement or necessity from the business. They were doing it because they wanted to do it. And that's the extra mile that you get out of people when they're Sugary people And you can then reward them because of it. So then you've got this perfect system of growth, development, reward, longevity, staff retention. You've got this perfect model for all those things.
I think I saw in one of your videos that you said you never had to actually sack anyone in 17 years.
No, I did sack, but to answer your question, I had a no-fire policy.
And I was going to ask, is that because you were great at recruitment, or if people didn't fit your culture, they kind of gradually left, or?
No, I did have to fire a couple of people, but that's a different story to firing because they weren't any good. I saw it as my responsibility to develop, train and nurture people. So if I hired a sugar person, I wanted to go on that journey with them. That was part of it. So I had a no-fire policy. So that's the part you're referring to, which most people can't understand, because if someone's not performing, you just get rid of them and hire someone else, which is I guess acceptable, right? That's a normal sort of process. But I didn't hire them on that process. I hired them on a sugar and cream type process. So I saw it as my responsibility to deliver opportunities and potential for growth to retain staff. I didn't see it as much theirs. Like if I hired cream staff and they didn't do what they said they could, well then you'd probably let them go, right? And look for another cream staff. That'd be the creamy model. But I didn't have a creamy model. So I had a no-fire policy. So whenever someone wasn't working out, or someone wasn't performing as good as I thought, or someone had lost just motivation as I would think it was, I'd have what I'd call a personal development interview. So I never had quarterly reviews. I had bonuses paid every month. I'd sometimes do 6 monthly and yearly bonuses, but I would do a personal development interview. And that could be as simple as going and sitting down, having a cup of coffee and having a chat and talking about where their goals are and what they want to do to achieve, where are they at, what's next for them, what do they want to do next year. And I'd sit down at the coffee shop next door. You remember that, Luke? Just so everyone knows, Luke was the coffee shop owner next door at one stage. And but I'd sit down at the coffee shops and have these one-on-ones with them. And they were called personal development interviews. And they can be on the fly or they can be scheduled or whatever. So that's part of that no-fire policy. And it's also part of that, these people wanted an opportunity. It was my responsibility to deliver on that. It was my responsibility to make sure that that opportunity went forward. So having a sugar and cream philosophy in staff, like I said, I didn't call it sugar and cream at the time, but I knew what I was doing. I constantly talked about it all the time, even with the staff in the business, that when we're looking for new staff and we'd be looking at all the resumes, well, this person here is going to offer some value and wants to grow, and this person doesn't. So we were always looking for the same people to come into business the same way. So that's, it wasn't I didn't fire anyone. You know, there were a couple of people that did some silly things, but that's a different story to performance or expectation or, those sorts of things. In fact, part of that no-fire policy was when I saw someone to reach the ceiling of their ability and now it was just a job and there was no more motivation, there was no more growth, I would then start looking for another replacement and just let them do their own thing until I actually naturally left on their own. So I still didn't fire them, but I just sort of went, okay, this is what's happening with this person. They've really reached the ceiling. They're not going to go any further. I'm just going to let them be an employee, but I'm going to start looking for a replacement right now and start nurturing the next person up. And sometimes that motivated people to stay and go the next level too. And other times, sure enough, there was a change of the guard. Now, I didn't expect people to stay forever, but if they lost motivation and it was just a job for them, well, I'd let them just do the job, but I'd start looking for the replacement.
Any examples where the sugary philosophy backfired?
Backfired. No, it probably wasn't the easiest path to take either, right? Because you'd think going out for all the cream clients would be easy, and you'd think going out for the cream staff would be easier. But it was actually a little bit harder because it took more work from me. But I think the retention and the longevity of everything was better looking for the sugary. But backfired, I'll have to think about that one. I'll have to think about that one. If I think about it in this hour, I'll mention it. But I can't think of too many times it backfired at all. Because really, if anything backfires, it still comes back to my responsibility. As the startup, as the original business owner to the CEO, everything was still my responsibility. So if it backfired, it was generally because of something I did wrong. And I just responded to all those things. Did I get everything right? Like I said, hell no. did I make a lot of good decisions? Yeah, I did. Did I make some dumb ones? Absolutely. But I made more good decisions than bad ones. So if anything backfired, I still saw it as my responsibility. It was something that I had to do better or change or fix. I never ran around blaming everyone, even when things were out of my control. You might recognise it, but you still got to respond to it because the buck stopped with me. Bottom line, buck stopped with me.
Yeah, and I guess when I say backfired, I when you've got engaged clients and engaged staff, and you encourage them to contribute, ideas and that kind of thing, sometimes it can get overwhelming with people saying, you should do this or you should do that, or...
Yeah, all right, so there you go. So here's a backfire, now that you've mentioned it. So one thing I had a logo, and I had a flow chart, which obviously none of you have ever seen, but I really loved my flow chart. And it just helped explain to people what everything that Rena did within an artistic sort of, image, so everything that Rena did as best as it could. And I also had a logo. And you know what? Every graphic designer that ever came to the business would constantly try to change the flow chart and constantly try to change the logo. And I'd be going, look, I really like that you're doing that, but there's other things in this business you could be doing instead of trying to convince me to change the logo. Now, that was a tough conversation because they thought, oh, look at this logo I've done for Scotty. And I'm going, there's nothing wrong with the logo. I quite like my logo. And I'm not going to make any more or less money because you're going to change the logo. What's going to make this business grow is maybe creating some graphic stuff that the clients are going to use to grow their business. How about we put the energy into that? So that was a tough conversation. So these people thought they were doing really good, trying to redesign the logo, or trying to redesign the brand, trying to redesign the colours, when there was nothing broken about it. It was okay. It was perfectly fine. I wasn't trying to be the creamy company anyway. My colours, blue and red, were perfectly fine. The logo was perfectly fine. But every time they try and do it, every time they try and change it, I had to have that tough conversation. So I guess that's one of the times it backfired, because I had to tell them essentially to stop wasting their time. It's not worth your time. So that's one of the backfires. The irony is the moment I got out of Renet, they took off the flowchart, the new company, and they changed the logo. I just laughed. I thought, there you go. Someone's gone, you know what we'll do now? We'll change the logo on the flowchart.
Scotty's gone.
I've gone, whatever. It doesn't worry me. I grew a company on those two things. That's fine by me. You can do whatever you like. You just bought the company. Nothing to do with me.
How important, Scotty, is it to surround yourself with good people? Like, I know in business, it can be challenging at times, and I think it's important to surround yourself with not only good people, but people who are better than you too, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes you go into a room and you feel like there's all these creamy people there, and you think, and you feel like a little insignificant person in a big networking room. But really, you're just the sugary person. You're the sugary person. There might be some cream, and that's fine for them to be cream. But just remember, I always saw myself as the sugary person. I was looking for motivation and inspiration, direction, because I always recognised the fact that I was that sugary person. I didn't have the ego, walked into the room and took control of the room, and nor do I ever want to do that, by the way. So if I ever get any networking things and you're all there, you'll see I'm quite sheltered in the corner. If I get asked to talk, well, that's different. I will change into the Scotty that has to stand up the front. That's okay. I don't mind doing that. But if I'm just in the room normally, I'd actually just much rather stand in the back corner and just have some nice, lovely conversations with a few people. And there's some people that just walk into a room and take control of a room. They're always like the creamy people. But if I'm paid to do it or asked to speak, well, that's a different story. But you are a sum of the network that you're around. So if you surround yourself with other sugary people and other people that are going on a journey in your network, and you all work together, well, then obviously you're going to achieve more. You're going to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and think that way, and it's got to benefit you. I mean, they say that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room, right? Because you're now the cream in a room. But I don't know whether I agree with that or not, because I've learned a lot from lots of people. I never see anyone as superior or inferior. I just see us all as different adults doing different jobs, if that makes any sense. I never saw anyone as anything different. But still, there are some people they have an aura about them. They've been always that celebrity. They've always had that sporting status. They've always had that creamy type persona. ever since they went through high school, right through their adulthood. And that's fine. And not saying I don't like to talk to those people or meet those people, but to be honest, I'd much rather surround myself with go-getters like us and constantly do that. So when you talk about your environment, yeah, that's sort of been my philosophy as far as that goes. Because, like I say, I recognise the fact I'm a sugary person. I'm always looking for motivation. I'm always looking for inspiration. And I'm always wanting to be a part of that journey with lots of people.
Mm. Who are some sugary people you admire?
Oh, look, if I started running through names, that'd be terrible. But there's so many of them, right? I'm not going to start running through names of admiring people. Well, let me give you a story then. I'll give you one story of a sugary person, if you don't mind. Just one, because no one in this room, or very few people in this room will know who I'm talking about. So let's give a sporting analogy. And I'm going to talk about Layne Beachley. Now, Layne Beachley ended up being 7 times world female surfing champion. All right. When I grew up, she's the same age as me. I went to the world titles with her, right? When she grew up, she actually grew up competing in the same area that I grew up competing in. However, I didn't even know her name. There was another girl's name called Kathy that we all knew, right? Because she won everything. She won everything. And when I went to the world titles, Layne was telling me that she couldn't beat her. And I'm going, well, yeah, because I even don't remember who you were, right? But you know what happened? Kathy went on to be the cream and actually didn't even make it as a professional sports person. Okay, she was right up there in the lights. She ended up getting one of my other analogies, which is CPD and RPD. So she ended up getting a thing called car park disease, where they arrive at the top and then they sit at the top while all the sugar's getting stirred up, and all of a sudden ends up being the performer, right? Ends up being the star of the show. So all the way along, she had to learn, because she was just the sugary one, the one that didn't quite win all the time. She had to work a bit harder. She had to do a bit more. She had to learn how to fail. She had to do dedication. She had to do grit and determination. All those things as a sugary competitor herself. And then by the time she hit her early 20s, when you've really got to stand up and be a professional sports person, well, she was. So all the way along, she was never the cream. She was never the star. She was never the one. She was never up in lights. She never got all the sponsorships or endorsements. But she went on to become 7 times world female surfing champion. And no one really knew her name as a teenager. I'm sure some did. But I was competing side by side with her in the boys as she was in the girls. I didn't even know who she was. And it turns out she was at the same comps. But I knew Kathy's name because she won everything. So there's a good example of, if you had to back a sports person, do you want a team of cream players, which sounds like the ideal team, or a team of sugary players that come together and all want to win no matter what happens? How often do you see the underdog win all the time? Let's think of State of Origin in Australia. How often did Queensland win? Because they never gave up. They were always a team of people that just wanted to go and do whatever it took. So, and that's an analogy then of sugary people compared to cream people. Mm. Does that answer what you asked?
Yeah, it does.
An example?
It's a good example.
Yeah.
Persistence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always admired that attitude of, I think Richard Branson says, screw it, just do it, and, thinking outside the box.
Yep.
I think it's important so you don't become stagnant in business, that, you stay inquisitive and you do think out the box. How do you, how over those 17 years at Renet did you make sure that you were constantly looking for new things and thinking outside the box?
All right, so that's a good example. We haven't spoken about product yet. So in the real estate industry, lots of things came along with the new shiny product. Think of virtual tours that came out in the early 2000s. And then think of things like, in the end, virtual reality tours. You could put on the goggles and all that sort of stuff. Well, I had to ignore all that stuff because that was all creamy type stuff that everyone liked to talk about. But you know what the sugary stuff was for me? Was talking to my clients and asking what they wanted in their business, if that made any sense. So I had to ignore and not even get any recognition for some of the cool things we did, because I was innovating all the time with really what my clients wanted, because it was a sugary model. I wanted to be with those clients on a journey. And every time I did something that was good for them, it was good for my next client. So as far as sugary products go, it's really easy in business to think, oh, that other business has got such a better product than mine. But it's really not important. What's important is that your product works for your clients and you've got something to sell to more clients. Because if that's your marketplace, so let's go to the real estate industry, if that's my marketplace, well, that's the only thing that matters. Not what the media is talking about or what you see advertised on social media or what you see people jumping up and down about straight away. You know, fads come and go in a sense. You know, those virtual tours came and went. Then they turned into the virtual reality ones as that example. But, you know, I didn't worry about that. I didn't worry about that creamy stuff the market was talking about. I just worried about what my clients wanted. You know, I'd much rather improve the CRM so my agents could work smarter rather than harder. So I had a saying at Renet. And the saying at Renet was, if they put 2 minutes into their database, they got 100 minutes back for free. So, you know, every single day when we turned up to work, every single thing we did in the software was only about one core objective for real estate agents, which was to give them their 100 minutes back for free. And that was it. We didn't care less what was shiny. You know, what can we do right now to either help real estate salespeople sell more listings or save time? Make more money or save time was a simple thing. They're going to put something in a database. What are the 100 minutes we give them for free? And that was the Sugary product, if that makes any sense. So when you talk about product, it was a philosophy behind the product as well. So just ignore all that cream that everyone can see. It's getting all the sprinkles in the media. Not important, right? It's really not important at all. I just ignored it. In some ways, it was a benefit being regional instead of city-based because I could just put on the blinkers and ignore all that media stuff, you know? So I just sat down and focused on what was important, what my clients wanted, what we could deliver, what was going to add value. Now, the Sugary products, you know, there might have even been a bigger business in town if you've got some sort of business, but it's not important. There's still people out there that want your products and services. Be the sugar. Look for the sugar. So much more rewarding if you ask me.
Yeah, it's funny through all, you know, a lot of the startups we connect with, there's, you know, complicated business plans and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I guess it comes back to, you know, what's the problem you're solving for someone and how are you solving it better than the competitor down the road?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. How are you solving it better? And how will people feel because of it? You know, the irony is I don't even drink sugar in my coffee or tea, right? I haven't had sugar in my coffee since the mid-90s or something, since I was a kid almost. And cream, I'm not even that big on cream, but everyone understands there's sugar and cream everywhere, right? You know, so as far as that goes, yeah, I don't even drink really sugar or cream. But the analogy works. The analogy works if you're looking for the sugary type products, you're looking for the sugary type staff, you become part of a sugary type network, your clients, it just works. It works so much better in that analogy.
So if I was going to have a takeaway from this, Scotty, is sugar attracts sugar.
I can run with that one too, right? I definitely agree that, you know, it's the mirroring effect, or the if you don't want to call it the mirroring effect, it's the pull effect. You know, the like-minded people. It definitely works, you know. And if you find a sugary customer, someone who wants to go on a journey, and you don't deliver that, and you just become the cream instead of being a part of their journey, well, that's not going to work either. So you've actually got to deliver, like with staff, I had to deliver that journey. So you go and find someone who wants to come on a journey with you, well, then you literally go on that journey with them. You know, so, and that's the Sugary Clients, and you attract that because you're a sugary person, you know, and that's exactly right. You're exactly right, Randy. So,
Great presentation.
Thanks, mate. Thanks. You know, and you're doing that now a little bit yourself, Randy, by doing the podcast. I know Brenda's doing podcasts too. You know, imagine doing a podcast and trying to get the most famous person in the world on it. But what you're getting right now is, I've seen some of yours, and they're people that are responding and they love being on there. They appreciate it, they're responding to it, they're marketing it, they're doing all those good things because you're attracting the right kind of people. Right at the moment, you're starting a business, you're getting all sugary about that, you're looking for those sugary people to put on your podcast as a guest, and it's working for you, right?
But it is, and it's interesting how, as we go along, it's improving. I can see one of the people right now, right in the middle of our screen, that I have to reach out to about being on my podcast. She's got a smile on her face. She looks a little tired like I do right now. Elaine, I'm going to put you on the spot. She reached out to me and said, "You doing okay, Randy?" And I just said, other than the fact that I feel a little tired because I'm fighting insomnia right now. So if I look half dead and pasty white like a dead fish or something, it's only because of that. But each week with each, we have more and more people reaching out and are interested in being part of the podcast. So.
And and that's a whole heap of things. It's a fish attracting device. It's a Trojan horse. But just look at the sugar and cream model. You've got you're a sugary person yourself now, and you're attracting the sugary people, and the experience for everyone is so much better, right? It's so much better. Whereas if you went chasing what you thought were all the creamy people to get on your podcast, you know what I mean? Guess what's going to happen? You're going to get disappointed. You're going to be, oh, why not me? Or why are they going on everyone else's? And you're going to get all that level of disappointment. Well, ignore them. Ignore all that creamy type people that you could have on. You know, I was talking to someone else about their podcast recently, and when he first started, he actually tried to get some of these people on and just gave up, right? He got disappointed, but he didn't give up on the podcast, and he managed to break through that 100 days, right? Well, now he's up to the 100 weeks, and guess what's happening? The opposite.
People who wanted to get on the first place or wanting to get on his show.
Exactly.
And that's what's happening with us now. I mean, we started out going for the sugary people, the like-minded people, the people we knew would be interested in talking about kindness and happiness. Because that's I'm the kindness giver. That's what my mantra is.
Yeah.
And once we started doing that and had a few shows and got some good response to that, and then we started, okay, we've got to be a little more outgoing in how we approach this. We started changing some things up in the way and becoming more professional, more, because we didn't know what we were doing. We just made up we threw the podcast together in response to COVID. Okay, we got COVID-19, we're going to do this. So we're learning, we're growing, we're getting tips, we're becoming better. And the more we do that, the more attractive we're becoming.
Yeah.
And people are reaching out. So we've got other opportunities to reach an audience and reach people that we wouldn't have had just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. So you're doing that sort of thing already with the sugary type model, the sugar and cream. And it's a perfect model. If you
I didn't even realize it, Scotty. You're rubbing off on me without even telling me about it, man.
But, and the more and I'm going to mean this, you'll understand what I'm saying. The more you understand sugar and cream or the rule of 100 or the business of thirds, and you guys have been on a few of these sessions, you're going to see it everywhere. Go, hey, that person's business of thirds. That person's going through the rule of 100. That person's doing perfect business judo. That person, perfect time duplication. And they're 5 business philosophies. They're going to make a massive difference to everyone. If you implement as many of these things as you can, I can tell you right away, your 2021 is going to be completely different to your 2019. It's just going to make a massive difference to you. And they're 5 business philosophies. So this was the 5th one, sugar and cream. And, they all work, and they all can work concurrently together, if that makes any sense. You don't just work on one or the other. They become part of your DNA. They become part of how you think. And that takes time to do. So any of these 5 business philosophies is not a magic wand. It's not something, it might be maybe a bit of a blueprint, but it's not something I can tell you if you implement sugar and cream tomorrow, here's how you do it. Well, it just takes time for that to become part of your DNA and part of the way you think. And half of it's recognizing what you're doing and accepting it. Accepting that you're doing the sugary people and accepting the fact that the creamy clients can go somewhere else because you're interested in the sugary ones because it's going to make a massive difference to you and them and be a far more exciting journey. And, and I'm watching it happen everywhere. I just love watching it. I love being a part of your journey, Randy, in that example. Love watching what you're doing.
Yeah, and something key that you said is as we become accelerators for each other. So it can link to what you were just saying. You become accelerators for each other as we become more attractive and we have people on, we're giving them an opportunity, a platform for them to share their message, to speak their voice, and reach a broader audience. At the same time, because they, certain people, the audience, the people that we're having on have a broader audience, have a broader reach in their sphere of influence. then it's accelerating our progress.
You got
That
it.
makes any sense through all my stuttering there?
No, and you're stirring each other up, you're mixing each other up, and you're all achieving goals. And that's what it's all about. Now, monetizing, that's a different story again. But what it means is you've got some basic fundamentals, some perfect DNA for a successful business, and you've got that foundation layer. And that's what it's all about. You build on that foundation layer of your business philosophies. I know I've got 5, you can have as many as you like, but build on those things and things will start to happen. You don't even expect. They'll just start to happen. Things will start to work for you. So having a financial model is another thing altogether, a financial system. But right now you're surrounding yourself with those sugary people. And that's what we all like to be a part of it. We all like, that's that mirroring effect and the pull effect. And there's probably plenty of examples. But anyone else got any other questions about the sugar and cream model, or did I explain it pretty well today?
Scotty, I have I'm not sure if it's a question, it's probably more of support of the sugar and cream model. And just going back to the podcast, I don't think this should be a surprise to any of us, but what the stats are really starting to show, at least in my episodes, and I think even just things that I listen to, is that sugary is far more relatable to people. And what I'm finding is that what the stats are showing, although I've had some fantastic guests, right the way through, but I wouldn't call, a big selection of them creamy, but there's probably some that have a bit more of a name in the marketplace, in their various marketplace, but then their story's not always relatable to the average person. And when we compare that to the average person that's just coming on and sharing their story that a lot of people relate to, there's far more feedback, far more positive feedback around that and relatable stories. And it actually then goes into the listenership around the sugary type of people that are become quite loyal to that, if it's that episode or those various episodes and stuff. So there's a real connection around those behaviors that you talk, grit and stuff. When they find that and they can relate it to it, they become very loyal around the whole process, whether that be a client, whether it be a listener, whether it be a friend or whatever. So yeah, not a question, but just supporting exactly what you're saying. And I think that's also in all the good work you're doing. What you do is take various concepts that maybe lots of people know, but you make them relatable and really understandable very simply to people, which is as we know, the absolute key, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I sort of have no choice but to keep it simple.
Don't put yourself down, mate.
It's the best I can do is simple, because guess what? I keep things simple for myself. Scotty, can I do that? Yeah. Call it the Richard Branson model. I don't mind. And Richard Branson was really good. He goes, well, that'll work. And he just went and did it.
Screw it, just do it.
Yeah, screw it, just do it,
What you're saying though is simple attracts simple. So are we all simple as well?
No, but what I'm saying though is we're
you don't need to justify it, mate. You don't need to justify it.
What I'm saying though is that everyone that I'm surrounded by now, like yourselves, we're all on this journey, right? We're all on this adventure. We're all at different stages of an adventure. I would much rather be surfing all day, as you all know, but it's boring. So I've gone through this whole new chapter now, and I'm actually, Randy talks about insomniac, and I've been up since 4:30 this morning because my brain's active again. And to be honest, I really love that sense of urgency. I love that determination back in my surfing again. When I didn't have that much time for surfing, if I went for an hour, I had to really enjoy the hour and go and make it happen. Whereas you start to go surfing for 3 hours, it's not that important. You let waves go and you talk to people, and you lose that sense of urgency. And you get it in business, you get it in sport, and you get it because you just have that sense of urgency. So I'm actually really enjoying this journey at the moment and reinvigorating myself through System 1357 and getting that sense of urgency back, that grit and determination. Weirdly enough, I missed it. Weirdly enough. So I'm as sugary as anything at the moment, Brendan. I'm highly motivated. I've got a second wind, which I never thought I'd get. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm guilty. I'm as sugary as anything at the moment. I'm just loving it.
I wanted to ask you a question about do you think people focus too much on trying to bring people into their environment where they should be more focused on just creating a great environment that people will be attracted to? Well,
there is both. I mean, if you're going to attract them, you want to actually try and do something with that attraction as well. So you do need to do both. You need to work on both concurrently. So, you create an environment people want to become a part of, as well as maybe farm or hunt for some of those people at the same time. So you do have to do a bit of both, right? So certainly there's a bit of a mix-up as far as that goes. You've got to be able to mix both of those things together. There's no doubt about it. So if you're going to ask me which one I prefer, well, I come from a hunter and gatherer background where I was business to business selling. So that's part of my trade. And then, the opposite is, the mirroring effect and creating the environment that people want to become a part of. So which one's better? I don't know. They're both just as important as each other.
Any last questions for Scotty? It's 11:59. We might wrap it up in a minute. But
Yep. We'll wrap it up and hang around. Same story.
Yeah. Do you want to give you've got another session tomorrow? You doing a Q&A session?
Yeah, I'm doing a Q&A session tomorrow afternoon. This is with, which is a terrible time for the people in the USA market this time. But you can't win them all, right? But yeah, that's with Helen Phelan from Ireland. She's a business coach over there. And we're addressing things like, creating FAD, a fish attracting device. How do you get that magnetic effect, and how do you have a conversation? And that's the workshop tomorrow, which is going to be pretty cool. But it's done a good time for Australia. It's 6 o'clock in the evening, and I think it's 9 o'clock in the morning through that whole UK European stretch. So this time it's done for that market, because there's lots of people who always want to attend from there, but they can't. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. So, although some do, believe it or not, some set the alarm and get up and come on, but most people, it's done this time for that Australian and UK market.
I'll keep it in mind if my insomnia is just.
I got up the other night and listened to one as well. Sometimes I get up at night time and listen, and
I've done that before. I mean, if I can't sleep, it's okay. I might as well be trying to do something.
So, but yeah, look, I'm happy to hang around. So that's sugar and cream. That's the fifth one. So business judo, time duplication, the rule of 100, the business of thirds, and sugar and cream. 5 business philosophies that will completely transform your 2021. Make it part of your DNA. Watch the replays, go and look at the other videos. It'll just completely transform how you look at everything going forward. And some of those seeds you plant in reality for how you're going to start 2022. That's the reality of it. Good stuff.